At 3-1-0 for the Panthers, one of the bigger underlying stories for the Cats has been bottom six defense.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, October 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. That is Jacob Winans. You can follow him on X at JakeW_8. Joining me on another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You can do that all on FanDuel. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And it's a game day for the Panthers as they will be continuing their 5-game road trip tonight in Detroit at Little Caesars Arena. Today, we are going to discuss the Panthers' bottom six and how defensively sound they have been through the first 4 games. We're also going to discuss the Detroit Red Wings rebuild as currently constructed right now, and then preview tonight's game between the two teams in the first of 4 matchups. So, Jacob, welcome back to the show. And 4 games, the Panthers are 3-1-0. They are at the top of the division. Can't go 82-0 as they suffered their first loss on Monday night against the Philadelphia Flyers. But I just want to get your overall feeling on just how the Panthers have gotten to this point with 6 points out of a possible 8.
Yeah, I mean, 3 wins out of the first 4 games. Definitely can't complain about that. But overall, I didn't love the way they played for the majority of the game on the road in Philly. But then that third period kind of showed what they're capable of, and they end up losing on a defensive lapse, a bad mistake from Sam Bennett. But there are definitely some signs in the way they're playing that are encouraging. I feel like the bottom 6, which we're going to talk about, has been really solid, really reliable. The power play has been surprisingly good, given the guys that are missing right now. Power play has really been important and productive so far for the Panthers, and I'm encouraged with goaltending as well. I think they've gotten great goaltending so far. Tarasov looked good. He didn't get the win, but it really wasn't on him. I thought he looked really solid and made some great saves to keep the Panthers in that game. So overall, 6 out of a possible 8. I'll take that to start the year. That's a great start. But yeah, they're going to have to keep the foot on the gas, and I think just the style of play, we're going to have to get used to that this year. They're not going to run a lot of teams out of the building. They're not going to blow teams out. They're going to have to play really solid defense. And there's going to be a lot of low-scoring ones, a lot of one-goal ones, and that's just what they're going to have to do this year, and they're going to have to get comfortable in those situations. So overall, B+ for their first 4 games.
I would say so as well. And after Monday's game, I discussed a little bit about, are they a little bit power up special teams reliant? And it's a discussion point where at the time I was thinking, okay, no goals at 5-on-5, but then you see the different parts of their lineup that are actually helping them get through. Solid goaltending, as you mentioned. And although most of the goals against are coming from the top 6 for the Panthers, I mean, right now Sam Bennett is at a -8 for the season for whatever plus minus is worse. Some of the goals that I've seen scored on him, the first one by Frank Nazar, it was on a bad pitch by the defense. So I wouldn't put that on the Sam Bennett line for the Panthers. But then you see goals that are lost on faceoffs. The first game against the Philadelphia Flyers, where Noah Cates is able to get right behind the Panthers defense, and then the bad pass in their D zone that ended up in the back of their net as well. So not all. That's why plus minus you have to somewhat take that with a grain of salt and actually look back at the plays and like, okay, maybe this one is his fault, maybe this one is not. But the thing is, it's a little bit of a quality over quantity that the defense for the for the opposition for the Panthers is whenever that top line as currently constructed is on, because they share 61% of the shot share while they're on. Marchand, Bennett, and Verhaeghe. We'll see if they continue that switch that they did in the third from the third period into tonight's game. We'll see at morning skate at 11:30. But that's a little bit that's a little bit of an alarm going off in a way for me at least. But the other part that has carried the Panthers through these first 4 games that we haven't really spoken about is just their bottom 6 delivering. Mackey, Samoskevich, Evan Rodriguez, Jesper Boquist, their shot share is at a 33%. So they're pinned in their own zone more often, but no goals against still at 5-on-5. So this is also a little bit of a growing pain that that line is going through as 3 players who are mostly wingers who Evan Rodriguez hasn't had to lead a line in a while. And the fact is that even though they have most of the time spent in their own D zone, still the fact that they have 0 goals is very encouraging. Both that and the fourth line is constructed: Cunnin, Gadjevich, Greer, no goals against, and a +2 at 5-on-5.
Yeah, the bottom 6 is definitely doing their job. The third line in particular, they're definitely in a tough spot because Evan Rodriguez not really a natural center anymore. Early in his career, he played some center, but kind of found his home as a winger. Then the other part of that is that line is also not very heavy. It's a bunch of guys that are speed players, not the biggest, not the strongest. So they kind of get leaned on a little bit in their own zone. And then also when you don't have a natural center on that line, you can lose some of those key faceoffs. So they're in a tough spot, but they're definitely holding their own. I think they make up for it with effort. They make up for it with speed. I think for the most part, they grind, they win board battles. They do the necessary things to keep the puck out of their own net. And I think once they kind of put the speed together and get a little bit more possession, that could be a really effective offensive line. I think Mackey has looked terrific to start the year. He's been a real bright spot to start this season. He looks fantastic. Evan Rodriguez, kind of the Swiss Army knife on this team. He can play any role, any position in the forward group and on any line. So I think ultimately they're going to continue to be a contributor. But I just think it's going to look a little different for them. They're not going to be able to play the exact same way that the Panthers' third line has grown accustomed to playing, just because they stylistically don't necessarily match up as a heavy, hard forechecking line right now, and it's just personnel. So I'm not concerned about them necessarily. I love that they haven't given up any goals, but overall, we'd like to see that possession time and the zone time sort of change, and then you'll see the production follow suit. But bottom 6 has done a great job, in my opinion, to start the year. And ultimately, when we talk about Sam Bennett being a -8, or the fact that all the goals against have come against the top 2 lines or special teams, those are problems that are very likely to get fixed. Your best players are going to play like your best players. So when the bottom 6 is playing the way they are right now, and they're defensively solid the way they are right now, I have a lot of confidence in the top 6 picking up the slack and getting their defense straightened out and really carrying the team. So it's better to have a struggling top 6 defensively than a struggling bottom 6, because the top 6 is easier to fix.
And you would hope that things would start to average out as they play more games, especially because their faceoff numbers, like you mentioned, are the only one that's really doing well on the dot is Anton Lundell this year. I mean, you see that on that third line, Jesper Boquist is taking faceoffs on the left, while Evan Rodriguez is the one on the right. And then whenever it comes to, that if you're the opposition, especially when the Panthers are in their D zone, closing gaps and not allowing them to get space so that they could use their edge work to cut to the middle and then shoot it in when they gain the red line to get a change. That's been what has been very productive for other teams whenever it comes to having a lot of zone time in the Panthers end throughout this young season. But this is it's still positive, the fact that they haven't given up anything, but we realize that, hey, personnel is why this is possibly happening. Not a lot of beef on that third line as of right now. And hey, that's the growing pains whenever it comes to missing your top guys in the lineup. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss more about tonight's matchup between the Florida Panthers and the Detroit Red Wings, the personnel that they have assembled throughout the last few years, and how they've dealt with this offseason. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments, and we don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've been putting off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization on your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. You could use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Segment number 2 here on this Wednesday, October 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez here with Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So I discussed a little bit of the Red Wings in the offseason about their build and just the expectations. I had them outside of the playoff picture, but it doesn't mean that they're not an improved team. And there are frustration with the Yzer plan on what he's been able to put together. He's took over the front office in 2020. He's had a few drafts now, and I can understand when if you're especially a millennial and you've seen the Detroit Red Wings make it to 20 plus straight postseasons, and then you're seeing this drought and the fact that they have a new arena in Little Caesars that hasn't seen a playoff game. It's almost more than half a decade that it's been around. You can understand why there's a little bit of impatience there. But just based on their roster build and the fact that they have a lot of their draft prospects finally starting to play on the big league club for them. Michael Branson-Nygaard, Marco Kasper, who made his debut last year, and then Emmett Finney, who was a 7th-round pick for the Detroit Red Wings, playing on their top line, and then Axel Sandin Pellikka. I remember watching him at the World Juniors just last year for Team Sweden. That's their top pick that the Detroit Red Wings have had that are part of their lineup. But here's the thing, Jacob. The problem with Detroit has always been just the lack of lottery luck in the years that they were rebuilding. So they haven't had the opportunity to get the best player in the draft, but they've been hanging around the 5 or 6 range. But even the chance that they had in the top 5, they missed out on a guy like Quinn Hughes and the player that they drafted. I believe it was Robbie Fabry that year. He's not playing in the NHL anymore. So there've been a lot of swings and misses for this Detroit Red Wings rebuild.
Yeah, it's been a mixed bag as far as the rebuild goes. The drafting hasn't necessarily been as good as they'd like it to be. Now they definitely have had some cornerstone pieces that have come from the draft. You think Murray Sider, of course, he was a big win in the draft, although his development has kind of plateaued a little bit, just kind of being saddled with some not great D partners. But overall, I don't think the drafting has really been their issue. I think the issue they've had has been the complete inability to find reliable goaltending.
Yes.
That has been their Achilles heel the past couple of years, and we've seen them get desperate and sign 5-6 goalies in an offseason, hoping one of them will pan out. We've seen them make the John Gibson trade. We saw them they've just kind of had a revolving door of guys in and out of the crease there, trying to find something or someone that can stabilize the position. And then, of course, they take a swing and draft high on Sebastian Cosa, who they would love to
Traded
be the
up for him
long-term
too.
guy. Traded up for him, first-round pick, and they love for him to be the long-term answer. Hasn't necessarily had the easiest transition to pro hockey. So goaltending, if they can get that figured out, they definitely have the pieces in place to be really, really competitive eventually. The other thing I think that has kind of held them back a little bit is just a little bit of irresponsible spending in free agency.
Yep.
If you're going to fully commit to your young guys and you want them to carry the franchise, you don't necessarily want to block them with aging veterans who you sign to term. Panther fans, we know we've seen that from time to time where the Panthers will sign some of these free agent guys to long-term deals and end up trying to find a way to get out of it.
Especially on
previous, exactly. The Panthers have had that in their history a little bit prior to Bill Zito, and we're seeing the Red Wings do the same thing. I mean, some contracts that were given out to Ben Sherratt, to Justin Hull, just don't make a ton of sense, and I think they've held themselves back a little bit. They took a big swing and spent a lot on JT Comfort. There's just some irresponsible free agency money that they've given out, and I think ultimately that's held them back a little bit. And then there's the ones that aren't necessarily irresponsible, but just they paid top dollar for it and didn't pan out. And you think Vladdy Tarasenko coming off a Stanley Cup with the Panthers. I mean, if they could rein in the spending a little bit in free agency, really focus on the development of their young guys and supplement that with short-term deals for veterans and sort of take that approach and then really find an answer to goaltending, they're not that far off. They've done a good job drafting, so they're really not that far off.
And by the way, it was Philip Zadina that they drafted ahead of Quinn Hughes, not Robbie Fabry. For a little bit of a correction from me earlier, but Vladimir Tarasenko, and the fact that they traded him for future considerations, they just wanted to get that contract off the book. And honestly, even after the Panthers won the Stanley Cup, I didn't think that that signing Tarasenko to term would have been the smart move as an aging veteran who although he fit with the Panthers system, I don't think that his game would have aged well in South Florida over multiple years as he was getting older. So kind of a sign from what they did when they did in fact trade Vladimir Tarasenko. But I'm looking at their books right now and just how everything is organized. And even with the John Gibson trade, he has 2 years left on his deal when making that trade from Detroit and Anaheim there. And also Sebastian Cossa, he's played games in the as much down in the ECHL, and this is a first-round pick goalie. It's taken him a little bit to get to the NHL level, and also him and Trey Augustine. Trey Augustine is also another promising goalie prospect that the Red Wings have. The deals that they have currently with their goaltenders doesn't block any of these two in the future. So as soon as next year, where Talbot is going to be a UFA, this at least gives a little bit of runway for their goaltenders to at least make that jump and at least be the backup starting next year as well. So and looking at the rest of their deals, JVR, Patrick Kane both expire and they're in their mid-30s. to think consecutive picks 1 and 2 overall are on the same team. Where have we seen that before? We've seen that with the Florida Panthers. So another team that has done that. But you see about what Steve Yzerman is building, and you can see why he hasn't made any promises saying what they are and if they're going to be a playoff team, and also sending kind of a message to their captain Dylan Larkin on trying to earn additions at the trade deadline, because that was a little bit of a war of words last year between captain and the head of the front office.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you want your GM to commit to your group and give up futures and trade picks or prospects to bolster your lineup, you have to give him reason to. You have to at least give your GM the belief that you're going to make a run. Otherwise, it's not really in the team's best interest. And again, you can look back to the Panthers for how how they kind of addressed this in the past with their own GM and Bill Zito. 2023, that group looked dead for a good portion of the season. And everyone is talking about how Radko Gudas is going to get traded at the deadline. They'll probably sell off some of their bottom six pieces for late round picks and just give up on the rest of the year. But they gave Bill Zito enough reason to believe that group could make a run. And while he didn't go and make a bunch of additions to the team, I believe they were the only team at the deadline to not make a trade. They ended up not selling. And I think Detroit is going to see themselves in a similar position where they're going to have to give the front office reason to believe that they can make a run, that they can put themselves in position to make the playoffs and at least win a round. And then you'll see them look to add at the deadline versus selling. And I think the responsibility for that falls on the players. It can't be the same situation as years past where they're barely scrapping for a wild card spot. You're not really giving your GM reason to take a big swing at the deadline, and he's just not going to do it if the team's not in a position where that's going to be beneficial. No one wants to waste assets, and if it feels like they're going to waste assets just to appease the team or appease the players, you got to earn that. You have to earn your deadline additions. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And a first round pick each of the next 3 years, and at least 2 second round picks in the next 3 years. The only one that they don't have is the second round pick that they traded to acquire John Gibson. So and currently $12 million in cap space, and there's nobody under contract with the Detroit Red Wings who's over 9. So that's a possibility. Isn't as much as big of a deal as it used to be. That could be a position where they could possibly see a possible trade to bring someone in to at least complement, because with the rising cap, you're going to be able to finally pay someone and actually build on this team, which I do believe that the Detroit Red Wings still have a pretty bright future here. So I get the long playoff drought, but I just see when it comes to a goalie not being blocked, of cheap contracts from development pieces that not a lot of them expire soon. I mean, for Simon Edvinsson is really the only one, the only big name from that group who's going to be extended from their young core come next year, and they're still going to have a lot of room to work with come the future. So and you see this with Montreal as well. These two teams are starting to really truly knock on the door. So but we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to preview tonight's game between the two teams and the recent history between the two squads. And the Panthers, they're looking to bounce back after dropping the first game of the road trip. We're going to discuss all that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets across the app. And it makes watching football a lot easier and even more exciting when you've got a little something riding in on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today to get started. Once again, you can go to FanDuel.com, download the app today to get started. Segment number 3 here on this Wednesday, October 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez here with Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday. And there's been a record that has been broken yesterday from the New York Rangers. So the New York Rangers have a record of the most time spent at home to begin a season of not scoring a single goal. The previous record was the 2001-2002 Florida Panthers, who went 155 minutes before scoring their first goal at home. Jacob, you want to know who the leading scorer of the Panthers was that season?
2001, 2002?
Yeah.
That's That's a tough one. It can't be our legendary number 10, because I can't imagine they would have gotten 3 games at home without a goal with him on the roster.
Yep, it was Pavel Bure, 49
Wow. Okay.
points. 49 points, leading the Panthers. And that was Stephen Weiss played less than 10 games that year in the year that he was drafted. It was right before Nathan Horton, Jay Bouwmeester. Peter Worrell had 354 penalty minutes as well that year, getting into a lot of fights. And current Sabres GM Kevin Adams was also on that team. The Panthers went 24, 44, 10, and 6. Let's not forget, before the lockout, there were ties in the NHL. I did not grow up with the era of ties, so I don't know what that an NHL is like for in my experience there. But Panthers Red Wings tonight from Little Caesars Arena. It'll be a nationally televised game with Kenny Albert, Eddie Olczyk, and Ali Lozoff for the broadcast tonight. And over under is set at 5.5. Only half the games for the Panthers have gone over have gone the over, and you could blame 2 empty net goals from the Flyers on the most recent one for them. So we know that it's another swing for how many goals that's going to be scored in a Panthers game. But the Panthers are 7-2-1 in their last 10 against the Detroit Red Wings. One of the losses last year, when the Panthers mostly played their AHL roster after the second end of a back-to-back in Ottawa. And I remember one of the other ones that they lost was in January of 24. Edward Rodriguez gets called for an embellishment that we were livid about, and then the Detroit Red Wings end up scoring there. But Sergei Bobrovsky loves playing Detroit. He is confirmed as the starter per Puckpedia. 28, 7-2, 935 save percentage, and a 1.85 GAA. And also, there's another fun fact about Sergei Bobrovsky against the Red Wings. Twice on November 2nd, he's played Detroit, and he's gotten 2 shutouts. Came in his first year with the Panthers, and it came the most recent year. So Panthers love playing this team. They've had their number, but like we mentioned in the previous segment, they have some upside with a young roster, but they will be without a key piece in Lucas Raymond, who they drafted a few years ago. He's been a 30-goal scorer, playing on that top line along with Dylan Larkin and Emmett Finney. So that's a big piece that is going to be missing, as he was hit to the boards by Chris Tanev in their most recent matchup against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, Lucas Raymond missing is that's a big loss. He's one of those young players that is kind of going to be the face of the Red Wings franchise eventually, along with Seider and just depending on how long Larkin plays. But I think ultimately Raymond's going to end up being their best player long term, and him being out, that's a really big loss for them. It's not going to be many teams that the players they have out from their forward group are going to match up to the players the Panthers have out from their forward group. So anything there where it kind of evens playing field a little bit, Panthers definitely have to capitalize. Just given the amount of firepower the Panthers are missing, if other teams are missing firepower in the forward groups, got to take advantage of those games. Definitely wish the best for Raymond. He's a really, really fun player to watch. I mean, yep. Part of that young Swedish core in the NHL right now that they've got a lot of talent coming in from Sweden right now, and he's a special player. So hopefully he's back on the ice soon. It should be an interesting game. Detroit tends to play the Panthers well, or at least physically and fast. That's kind of how those matchups always go. They tend to get a little bit. They've gotten a little bit heated in the past, even though Detroit's not really on the same level as the Panthers as far as postseason success. They haven't had a playoff series. Those games do tend to get a little bit spicy, so we'll see how that plays out tonight. But I think the key with this is just keep Detroit off the power play. They've got a lot of guys that are really good and really creative on the power play. Patrick Kane has been doing it for years. Dylan Larkin can play. Seider can play. I mean, they've got some guys and got some really good skill on that power play unit. Keep this game at 5-on-5, wear them down, and I think you're going to end up being okay. But yeah, should be a good game, good early season test. And we talk about the Red Wings playoff drought, and one thing we didn't bring up on the last segment is they haven't necessarily been a bad team, and they've just barely missed the playoffs in a couple of these seasons. But
Off a
we also
tiebreaker.
exactly the tiebreaker. We can definitely acknowledge on this show that they've also just kind of been unlucky playing in such a brutal division. I mean, the Atlantic Division is just a gauntlet.
Mhm.
It's hard to crack the top 4 or the top 5 in the Atlantic Division. When you're running against Florida, Tampa, Toronto, Ottawa's on the rise, Montreal, these are all teams that are really in contention every year for a playoff spot right now. Um, the only one in the Atlantic that I can really say is kind of a bottom feeder team is Buffalo. And
Yeah.
even they almost made the playoffs a couple years ago. So it's not like it's not like the Atlantic Division is a cakewalk to get to the playoffs. They've fought an uphill battle, but they are a good hockey team.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and their penalty kill has been outstanding. They're 6 of 7 right now. Dylan Larkin and JT Confer are a big part of that. Mason Appleton and Rasmussen are part of that first unit. Which Mason Appleton, in their game against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Monday, he was on that top line when Lucas Raymond got hurt, and he got the GWG for the Red Wings there. And their power play is clicking again. It was a big part. We called them power play merchants last year, where they were hot. There was one game in January, even last year, where they got 3 power play goals early on, and the Panthers just couldn't catch up with how. And that was shortly after the head coach firing that brought Todd McClellan in. So they were just riding the new head coach bump at the time, and the Panthers were the victim of that. Right now, they're 3 of 12 on the power play. We know what they have good personnel pieces in different parts. A quarterback on the power play, a net front presence, and the guy who could win faceoffs in Dylan Larkin, and a straight shooter in Patrick Kane. So the Panthers, their 12 for 12 penalty kill is going to be put to the test currently in this one for the Panthers here. And also you got to take advantage of that top 4 for the Detroit Red Wings, because right now the top 4 for them at 5-on-5, they're -3 right now. We spoke about free agency and deals. Ben Sherratt is still on that top pair when he was supposed to be a bridge guy. And I know if you put Edvinsson and Seider together, it creates a little bit of an imbalance in the lineup for them. But even then, splitting those two up, that hasn't necessarily worked at even strength this year. So this is the opportunity for the Panthers to kind of pounce and get their forechecking game going.
Definitely, and when you look at that top 4, it's we also didn't mention this when discussing the rebuild, but some ill-advised trades too. And you look at that top 4, Jake Wallman would look really nice there right now.
Yeah.
That's a
Look
guy
what they gave up. Look what San Jose got in the trade to Edmonton versus what Detroit got.
Yeah, exactly. And Wallman, while he didn't win the cup for Edmonton last year, he was a thorn in the Panther side. That's a good player, and I'm glad he's out of the division. But that's another one that Detroit kind of, that's a swing and a miss as far as that whole situation went. That's a good piece you could have helped build around. He was a great partner for Seider, but the mistakes of the Red Wings front office could be the Panthers' gain, and just make sure, you got to make sure you apply the pressure. We know Ben Sherratt, not the best puck mover, not the best skater. He's a grinder. He's gonna throw the body. He's gonna win board battles. He's heavy. But you got to make him skate. You got to apply a lot of pressure on him when he has the puck. You got to forecheck hard and force him to make quick decisions. And if you're able to do that, he can put Seider in a tough spot trying to cover for him, and you can pounce on some of those mistakes. So that's going to be one piece. You got to take advantage of that top pair, especially the left side. Put a lot of pressure on Sherratt, which forces Seider to have to cover more than what he's really supposed to be covering. Reminds me a little bit of when Sherratt and Ekblad were paired up, and Ekblad was having to cover a lot of the extra ground coming off of a leg injury, and it was just not the best situation in the playoffs that year. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of some young players in the lineup. You got an opportunity to forecheck hard, lean on them, win board battles. Should be the heavier team against a lot of these lines. I know Detroit has a couple of giants in their lineup on that roster, but
straightforward.
But just take advantage of some of the younger guys who don't have that experience necessarily, and I think they'll end up being okay. I do expect a close game and probably a low scoring one too. I think it's going to be more of a defensive battle tonight.
Yeah, no doubt, and we will see. We're expecting Cam Talbot has played the last 2 games for the Red Wings after John Gibson gave up 5 in less than 40 minutes. So Talbot has started the last 2. We'll see if he which goaltender will be taking the ice first for morning skate, which at this point in time it's 20 minutes away from the Red Wings hitting the ice for that. So we'll know then. We'll tweet it and post it on our social media accounts to see what the goalie matchup will be. And hey, the Panthers have a good Atlantic Division test. Not a must win, but another one of those swing games, as the Detroit Red Wings are expected to be on the playoff bubble this season, in a tough Atlantic Division and an Eastern Conference. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. As always, a successful Winans Wednesday. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at JakeW_8. And before I sign off, I'm going to use the time to wish you a very, very happy birthday. Don't look a day over 25, but very, very happy birthday to you today. Yeah, definitely drop some comments and some birthday wishes for Armando. Always happy to record with you on your birthday. It's fun day every year. So I hope you have a good time celebrating, and let's hope for a Panthers W to celebrate.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. Let's hope for a win for the Panthers. And 32 never looked and felt so good. So very thankful to make it to this point. So Jacob, thank you so much. And I'll see you next week, my friend.
Looking forward to it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.